It's a free-for-all in San Francisco. We've been reporting about this since Fox and Friends this morning. Crime and looting are out of control. Just this past weekend, mobs of thieves ransacked retail stores, pharmacies, luxury shops. Law enforcement is calling many of these raids organized. You think so? In a single 24-hour period, you got a mob of looters targeting a Louis Vuitton high-end shopping district store, while as many as 80 looters in ski masks raided a Nordstrom just outside the city. Eyewitnesses described the scene as something out of a movie. That's what I think. In a nearby Oakland, by the way, about 17 miles away, the same period of time, hundreds of vehicles reportedly targeted marijuana dispensaries and other stores. Car break-ins are on the rise in San Francisco as well. Compared to last year, break-ins are up, get this, 753%. As the Hoover Institute recently noted, which, by the way, is right in that neighborhood, San Francisco is now more dangerous than 98% of the U.S. cities. I'm looking, for example, Compton, California, a city famous for drug wars and gang wars. It's now almost twice as safe as San Francisco. Almost all of this increase in crime can be traced back to Proposition 47. That's a referendum that was passed back in 2014 in California. It was backed by California elites like Netflix CEO Reed Hastings and Napster founder Sean Parker, as well as George Soros' Open Society Foundation. It was called the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, but Proposition 47 did just the opposite. 47 reclassified certain theft and drug possessions as only a misdemeanor if the dollar allotted to $950. Yep, that's where this all started. Now, previously, any theft or drug possession over $400 was a felony. In other words, crimes that were once felonies and punishable by up to 3 years in prison are now simple misdemeanors. Law enforcement may not even bother investigating or prosecuting, often won't even bring charges. Those who charge are basically facing a maximum of 6 months in jail, if that. So, San Francisco Police Lieutenant Tracy McCray explained it this way, quote, if you steal below $950, you get a citation and you could just get to walk away. And if you don't show up in court, guess what? Maybe you get a bench warrant, or maybe they even toss that out before it gets to the point. In some ways, it doesn't even seem to make any sense to call shoplifting shoplifting. This isn't one person going to a store and concealing goods in their pockets or bags. These are organized mobs. Look at this video I'm sharing the screen with. They're not trying to hide anything. Nearly 100 people joined the mob of organized theft just this past weekend in San Francisco at a high-end shopping district. Look at this.
The sounds and sights of Union Square are not as pretty today as they usually are. Here's what's left behind. Windows are boarded up at Louis Vuitton. Crews replacing an entire door at this Yves Saint Laurent. Windows are shattered at Burberry with a hole still left over on its door. Wooden boards also covered the windows at Hermes. A witness captured the moment people tried to break in.
When I passed by Hermes, there are a group of people. I would say it's really around 100 people. And then after I passed them, they just started to try to get into Hermes, and they started cracking the glass.
It's insanity. Theft is so bad in San Francisco that over the last few years, Walgreens has closed 22 stores in the city. The retail pharmacy spends 35 times more in security guards in San Francisco than they do anywhere else.
Walgreens saying it's closing more than 20 stores, 5 in San Francisco, because of this rampant problem, what's being called organized retail crime. The company pulling the plug on these locations, saying it made the decision only after having increased our investments in security measures in stores across the city to 46 times our chain average in an effort to provide a safe environment. And drugstore items ending up in impromptu markets like this in San Francisco.
It's surreal, right? Store security won't intervene to stop the shoplifters. I personally don't think they can. And of course, would they? And if they did decide to jump in, why would you get killed over this? A mob of thieves in Oakland over the weekend fired 175 shots as they stole from a dozen different businesses. The gunfire forced the police to retreat to safe areas. The cops are pushed back. You can see footage of those shoplifters raiding a Wellspring pharmacy on your screen. You would think elected officials in San Francisco would be interested in solving this problem. But if you ask them, there is no problem. Just last month, San Francisco Mayor London Breed, real name, said Walgreens was exaggerating about having to close because of all the theft.
They've made their decision. We have tried to work with them in order to ensure that we are covered in terms of having pharmacies all across the city. This is going to, of course, impact a lot of our neighborhoods, but I wouldn't go as far as to say they can't do business. They still have a lot of stores. Everywhere you look, almost every corner, you'll see a Walgreens, and some of these stores are not just closing because of retail theft, they're closing because they're not necessarily bringing in the sales that they once did. So I don't want to attribute that completely to just retail theft.
Oh, I would. Meanwhile, San Francisco's radical district attorney, Chesa Boudin, who used to be a translator for Hugo Chavez, now dead, wants San Francisco to show compassion for shoplifters. He recently explained that jailing shoplifters would expose them to poor living conditions in jail.
There are people who are going to take those packages sometimes. It's going to happen. And it's a crime, and we're going to prosecute it. But we want to do it in a way that's compassionate, that's humane, and that understands the root causes of that crime, and that gets at them. Because if we put someone in jail for stealing a package off my front steps for the maximum, which is usually going to be 6 months, and put them right back on the street, we've cost the city a lot of money. We've exposed someone to the sexual assault that occurs in jails, to the contagious diseases that are transmitted in jails.
What idiocy. Now that it's more than just pharmacies that are being looted, Chesa Boudin is, quote, outraged about what happened over the weekend. In a tweet, which is the best way to attack an issue, he threatened looters to not quite bring that noise to our city, and that felony charges would follow. But Boudin has been district attorney for 2 years. He's done nothing while crime skyrocketed, which is why he is now facing a recall election next year. This is happening in Democrat-controlled cities all across the country. Looting is so common in New York City, where I am, now that all sorts of everyday items like shampoo and deodorant, they are locked up in pharmacies. So you got to ask permission for the person to go over with his keys or her keys and open up to get a bottle of Prel. The New York Post reported last month that there are empty shelves in drugstores because the city, well, it's the victim of shoplifters. Shoplifters walk in, they grab what they want, and they are not even arrested. Meanwhile, just days after a career criminal named Darrell Brooks Jr. drove through a parade and killed 6 people in a celebration of the holiday season over in Wisconsin. Now, the White House is defending its effort to end cash bail. No cash bail, soft on crime policies are why people like Darrell Brooks can repeatedly commit crimes and get released onto the streets and kill us. Brooks has already been posted bail twice this year for $500 and $1,000. And just days before he ran through a parade, Brooks had been released on $1,000 bail after getting arrested. All he did was punch his girlfriend and run over her at a gas station. This is what happens when you make it easier for criminals to commit crimes and there's no retribution.